She thought she could walk away and win. But what if your silence said more than any goodbye ever could? This isn't about revenge. It's about rebirth. Your rise begins now. Welcome to Stoic Bridge, the bridge between ancient wisdom and modern life, guiding you through life's storms with calm and resilience. You might believe that cutting her off is the ultimate punishment, that your silence will echo inside her like thunder, breaking her down from the inside out. But here's the hard reality most men don't see until it's too late. She anticipated it. She's already seen this pattern. She's even rehearsed it in her mind. Going no contact might quiet the noise for a while, but it doesn't dismantle her ego. It doesn't tip the scales of power. It doesn't make her rethink the moment she let you go. And yet, you're here now, not because you're weak, but because you were committed. You gave everything, your loyalty, your energy, your time. And when she walked away, she didn't just leave you in silence, she left you questioning your own worth. But here's the twist. That doubt, it's not a scar, it's a signal, an awakening. A reminder that this moment was never meant to break you, it was meant to rebuild you. This video isn't a playbook for petty revenge. It's not about chasing what walked away. It's about becoming a man whose silence doesn't beg for attention. It commands it. A man who no longer just goes no contact, but who reclaims every part of himself from the inside out. We're going deeper than tactics. We're rewiring your mind, rebuilding your emotional backbone, and reigniting the fire that once made you magnetic. This is Stoic strength. Not loud, not desperate, but powerful in stillness. And when you learn to embody that, she won't just remember you, she'll regret letting you go. So if you're ready to shift the energy, reclaim your worth, and silence her ego without saying a single word, let's step into the transformation. 1. Burn the illusion. Sometimes what we mourn isn't the person, but the story we told ourselves about them. You're not grieving her, you're grieving the image you built in your own heart. A fantasy stitched together from hope, longing, and the dream that someone would finally see you completely and never walk away. The woman you remember, she wasn't just a person. She was a projection. She said the right things, touched places in your soul you didn't even know existed, and maybe she whispered promises of forever. But step back. What did she actually do? Did she vanish without explanation? Did she breadcrumb you with false hope, play the victim, or run into another man's arms while you were still bleeding from wounds she caused? That's not love. That's manipulation. That's ego at play. And every time you revisit those messages, those perfect memories, you're not holding on to love. You're feeding a delusion. You're keeping her on a pedestal she never earned. This is where your power begins. The first strike in reclaiming your strength isn't in action, it's in perception. You must burn the illusion, because as long as you keep seeing her as rare, special, or irreplaceable, she holds power over you. You validate her, you inflate her image in your mind, and that keeps you trapped. But a Stoic man, he faces truth, not fantasy. He stops worshiping potential and starts honoring reality. That illusion you've clung to, it's not your sanctuary, it's your prison. When you strip away the emotion, the excuses, and the what-ifs, you'll finally see what was always there. The red flags, the selfish patterns, the chaos you romanticized. She wasn't your destiny. She was your mirror, a reflection of where you lacked boundaries, where you loved blindly, where you needed healing. And now, it's time to stop loving potential, stop painting pain as passion, and start choosing your self-respect over your attachment. Burn the illusion, and in the smoke that rises, you'll find clarity. She didn't break your heart, she revealed where it had no walls. Daughter 2, become unreachable. Imagine building a fortress so silent, so impenetrable, that no echo of her name can shake its walls. That's what becoming unreachable truly means. Because no contact, that's just the first layer, the surface level defense. Any man can block her number, vanish from her feed, or walk away without a word. But that's not strength, that's survival mode. If your goal is to genuinely crush her ego, not out of revenge, but to reclaim your peace, then you must go deeper. Unreachable doesn't just mean physical distance, it means she loses access to your emotional space. No more cryptic posts aimed at her. No more quotes hinting at pain. No more Instagram stories tailored to spark her curiosity. Every time you try to show her what she's missing, you're still handing her power on a silver platter. Here's the raw truth. If she senses that you still care, even slightly, she still owns a piece of you. If a single silence, a vague status update, or her name flashing on your phone can pull you off center, she wins. And a Stoic man, he does not play to lose. To become truly unreachable, you must master the art of emotional discipline. This isn't about pretending to be cold, it's about stepping into full control. You stop checking her accounts, you don't ask mutual friends for updates, you stop imagining how she's reacting to your glow up. She's not your concern anymore, your peace is. You rebuild your inner citadel brick by brick and you guard it with stillness, because that's what she's really after. Not your attention, but your stability. And here's something most men never realize. Women who thrive on attention are destroyed by indifference. They don't fear your anger, they feed on it. What terrifies them is your calm. When your silence carries no emotional residue, no hidden message, no plea for recognition, that's when the power dynamic shatters. Suddenly, the silence speaks louder than any message. It becomes a void she can't fill, a mirror she can't read. And in that space, the questions begin to multiply. What is he thinking? Does he still care? Has he moved on? You become a mystery, a question mark that refuses to explain itself. And when you become the unknown, you reclaim the upper hand. Because unpredictability is power. And that's when everything begins to shift, quietly but completely. So don't just disappear. Disappear with purpose. Become unreachable, not out of spite, but out of sovereignty. And from that place of strength, we move forward to the next transformation. 3. Master the void. There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels like drowning. And most men, they panic in it. They treat the silence like a punishment, like a waiting room where they sit in agony, counting the minutes until she comes back with an apology or regret. But that mindset, that's not strength. It's self-deception dressed as patience. If you want to flip the power dynamic, you don't survive the silence. You master it. You make the void your territory, your training ground. Because a true Stoic doesn't flinch at emptiness. He doesn't escape it. He enters it willingly, with open eyes and steady breath. That space, it's not a curse. It's the forge where real transformation begins. Not in chaotic conversations, not in desperate messages, and certainly not in fake closure. The real breakthrough happens in the stillness, where there's no attention to chase, no dopamine to distract you, and no one there to validate your worth. Just you. You and the raw, unfiltered parts of yourself that are still hurting. The parts that no one, not even she, ever saw clearly. And that's your edge. Because while she's out distracting herself with noise, attention, and shallow escapes, you're going deeper. You're cultivating discipline. You're sharpening your focus. You're turning your solitude into a crucible, into a temple where your pain becomes precision, where your grief becomes grit. The man who can sit in silence without flinching, without seeking love, noise, or attention, is the man who becomes unstoppable. Mastering the void means you stop obsessing over when she'll notice and start obsessing over who you're becoming. It's not just about detaching from her. It's about detaching from the need to be completed by anyone. You begin to move differently. You speak less, observe more. You build quietly in the dark until one day the world sees the finished version and wonders how you became that man. And she'll feel it, not through a message, not through a subtle quote or story, but through a powerful silence, no longer heavy with longing, but vibrating with growth. She'll feel the absence of your weakness. She'll sense the shift in your presence, because you're no longer searching for her in the void. You're using the void to evolve into something unshakable. So let the silence stretch. Don't resist it. Refine in it, because the man who masters the void is the man who rewrites the ending. Star 4. The mirror effect. Sometimes the loudest message is delivered in complete silence. You don't destroy her ego with long texts or emotional explanations. You do it by becoming her reflection, cold, clear, and impossible to escape. A mirror she never asked for, but one she can no longer ignore. Most men, when abandoned or betrayed, chase closure like it's oxygen. They pour their hearts into messages, desperate to be understood. They plead to be seen, to be heard, to be acknowledged. But that's not power. That's performance for the sake of validation. And every time you do it, you feed her ego, because she still holds the power to affect you. If you really want to shake her, don't argue, don't explain, don't respond. Let the silence do the speaking. Let your absence become the consequence she never saw coming. When you stop chasing her and start mirroring her energy, her detachment, her distance, her disregard, something inside her begins to unravel. Suddenly, the attention she used to feast on is gone. The chaos she once controlled is still. And all that remains is a mirror, reflecting the choices she made back at her with sharp, unfiltered clarity. This is the essence of the mirror effect. You no longer react. You simply become the result. You stop being the man who begs to be understood and instead become the man she now must understand on her own. And here's the real twist. You don't do this out of bitterness. You do it from self-respect. You give her nothing to argue with, nothing to twist, nothing to blame, no excuses, no dialogue, just silence and the slow, creeping realization that she lost a man who changed, not to win her back, but to reclaim himself. That's when the cracks begin to show. That's when regret takes root, because deep down she expected the script to stay the same. She expected you to fold, to beg, to sit in the shadows waiting. And when you don't, when you evolve in quiet discipline, detached from the need for her attention, she starts to feel it. Not in your words, but in your distance. Not in your presence, but in the shift of your energy. The regret, the self-doubt, the curiosity, the insecurity, they don't come because you tried to force them. They come because you didn't. You gave her nothing except her own reflection. And that, more than anything, is what she can't handle. So don't speak to prove a point. Become the point. And now let's step into the final shift that seals your transformation. 5. Withdraw all validation. Ego is like a parasite. It feeds on attention and it dies in silence. Praise, reactions, jealousy, even a lingering glance, these are its fuel. And that's why, even after she's walked away, she may still linger on the edges of your world. A random like, a casual story view, a vague just checking in message. But don't be fooled. This isn't affection. It's ego maintenance. She's not truly asking, do you still love me? She's asking, do I still have power over you? And this is the trap where most men fall. They validate her without realizing it, through silence filled with intent. They post carefully curated thirst traps, hoping she notices. They write cryptic captions, half meant for her. They over-explain their detachment in long, performative posts. They throw subtle shade, thinking it'll sting. But every one of these gestures is a signal. She still matters. You want to crush her ego? Don't argue. Don't engage. Just cut the supply. Withdraw all forms of validation, not with bitterness, but with indifference. A Stoic man understands something vital. Attention is currency. Every look, every emotional ripple, every reaction, it's all a payment. And she's already withdrawn more than she ever deserved. You owe her nothing, not an update, not an explanation, not even closure. Your glow up doesn't need to be announced. It's not a spectacle, it's a quiet evolution. You don't move to prove a point. You move because your time, your focus, your energy are no longer for sale. You walk like a man who doesn't need an audience to validate his path. And that's when something in her shifts. Because while she expected you to prove her wrong, to show her what she lost, to try and spark jealousy, what she gets instead is a void. Not coldness, not hatred, just absence. The kind of absence that feels like erasure. The deeper you root yourself in that quiet power, the more her ego begins to fracture. Because what's more terrifying than rage? Irrelevance. When she sees that you're not even performing anymore, that you don't care if she's watching or not, that's when it hits her hardest. She's no longer the center of your orbit. She's not the storm. She's not the sun. She's not even a name you say out loud anymore. So stop feeding the fire. Let it starve. Because in the silence where she no longer exists, that's where your power becomes undeniable. Das 6. Transmute the pain into power. There's a moment, quiet and sharp, when pain becomes something else. Not a wound, not a weakness, but fuel. That ache in your chest, it's not a curse, it's potential. Untamed, raw, and what you do with it determines everything. You have two paths in front of you. Let the pain rot you from within like rust on steel, or melt it down and forge something unbreakable. Many men stay stuck in the ruins, looping the betrayal, haunted by the question, why me? But a Stoic doesn't dwell in pity. He doesn't wait for answers. He shifts the question entirely. He asks, what now? You want to crush her ego? Then don't chase revenge. Transform the pain she gave you into the foundation of your evolution. Let it be the fire, not that consumes you, but that tempers you. The most dangerous man isn't the one who hurts. He's the one who alchemizes hurt into strength. Turn heartbreak into obsession, not with her, but with yourself. Your craft, your solitude, your discipline. Pour your focus into the gym, your work, your mission. Let the fire she started fuel your rise, but don't give her the credit. Give her the silence. Give her the distance. Because the man who emerges on the other side, he's sharper, colder, wiser, and most importantly, he doesn't love because he needs someone. He loves because he chooses to. Transmutation is the ultimate revenge without lifting a finger. It's when she realizes she didn't destroy you, she refined you. Not because she meant to, but because you refused to be broken. You took every insult, every lie, every dismissal, and you used it. You trained harder, you moved smarter, you trimmed the dead weight, and now she doesn't just regret what she did. She regrets ever thinking you were weak enough to stay down. Because this isn't a glow-up, this is deeper, elemental. You become a storm in human form, calm, grounded, laser-focused. A man rooted in purpose, no longer available to what once harmed him. Not because you're hiding, but because you've evolved. And now she no longer fits in the world you've built. So don't numb the pain, transform it. Because the version of you that rises from the fire, that's the one she never saw coming, and the one she can never touch again. Saw 7. Become the man she can't replace. Sometimes, the sting doesn't come from what you say, it comes from what you become. Here's a brutal truth most men ignore. Breakups rarely hit her in the beginning. She walks away convinced there's better out there, convinced you were just another name in a long list of forgettable flings. To her, you're something she can replace, like changing shoes or switching songs. But that's your moment. Not to prove something with words. To prove everything with transformation. You want to truly crush her ego? Don't chase revenge. Don't flex online. Don't waste energy showing her what she lost. Just become the man she'll never be able to replicate, no matter who she runs to next. And this isn't about flashing cash, chasing clout, or putting on a show. That's surface level, weak energy. This is deeper, stoic, rooted. You become a man so grounded, so focused on purpose, so in command of his own presence, that your energy becomes the most valuable thing in the room. You radiate something that can't be copied. Stillness in chaos, clarity under pressure, self-control in a world full of emotional reactions. You carry peace like a silent blade, discipline like armor, confidence without arrogance. Ask yourself, how many men does she know who don't flinch under emotional fire? Who aren't glued to validation? Who don't perform for attention? Very few. And that's your edge. While she drifts through a carousel of men offering the same recycled charm and fragile bravado, you become the anomaly, the outlier, the one that haunts her memory, not because of what you did, but because of who you became. And here's the key. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about becoming the version of yourself you always had the potential to be, with or without her. She was just the storm that forced you to build shelter. She was the spark, but the fire, that's yours alone. And now, when she scrolls past your name, when a mutual friend mentions you, or she stumbles across your quiet success, she feels it. Not just loss, displacement. Because she didn't just lose a boyfriend, she lost a once-in-a-lifetime presence. And what do you do with that power? You don't gloat. You don't throw subliminals. You just live, so completely, so unapologetically, that your absence weighs more than your presence ever did. Because in the end, becoming irreplaceable isn't about making her regret leaving. It's about making sure you never need her back. 8. Build a new identity in shadow. Growth doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers in the dark, out of sight, away from the noise. True transformation doesn't need an audience. It doesn't beg for validation. It happens in the quiet, in the solitude, when no one's watching and there's nothing left to prove. That's where real identity is forged. You don't evolve under the spotlight. You rebuild in the shadows, quietly, methodically, relentlessly. And if you really want to crush her ego, stop trying to be noticed. Start becoming someone so refined, so evolved, that even if she tried to look back, she wouldn't recognize you. This is where most men slip. They crave her regret in real time. So they post gym selfies, business wins, cryptic captions meant to sting. But that's not strength. That's performance. And performance is rooted in insecurity. When your healing still needs an audience, you're not healed. You're just rehearsing pain for applause. A stoic man doesn't rebuild for others. He rebuilds for himself. He doesn't post progress. He becomes progress. You don't need her to see the glow up. You need to evolve so far, so thoroughly, that the next time she hears your name, it doesn't even echo with the memory of the man she once knew. This isn't about revenge. It's about rebirth. You strip distractions, you rewire your habits, you train your mind like a monk, your body like a warrior, your vision like a leader. You restructure your sleep, your purpose, your priorities, and most importantly, you do it in silence. Not because you're hiding, but because you're focused. Because once your identity is anchored in who you truly are, not in who you're trying to impress, you become untouchable. You move through the world with clarity. You speak less. You act more. Your energy shifts and it begins to ripple. And here's the beautiful paradox. The moment you stop trying to be seen, everyone starts noticing. Not because you're shouting, but because you're glowing. Not because you're posting, but because you're present. She won't feel your comeback in a caption. She'll feel it in the way people mention you. In the silence where your name used to echo one way and now echoes differently. She won't recognize you anymore. And that's not an accident. That's the point. This isn't just a comeback story. It's a resurrection, and she's not invited to the next chapter. Because when the old version of you dies in the dark, what emerges is someone who no longer needs to be remembered, because he's too busy becoming unforgettable. 9. Let her watch from afar. Picture this. You're building a new world, brick by brick, and just beyond the gates, she watches. Not because you invited her, but because she can't look away. You don't need to block her. You don't need to erase her. You simply rise at a distance she can no longer reach. And that stings more than any argument ever could. This isn't about pettiness. It's precision. You've rebuilt. You've let go. You've become unreachable. Not just to her touch, but to her influence. And now, she sits on the outskirts of your life, fully aware that the version of you she once knew doesn't exist anymore. Here's the truth. People crave what they can no longer control. When you were available, she underestimated your presence. She thought she had time. She thought your loyalty was permanent. But now she has to witness the life she walked away from, thriving without her. And here's the twist. You didn't flaunt it. You didn't provoke her. You didn't post for her to see. You simply moved with strength, with direction, with purpose. You became the man she secretly never believed you could become. The one who doesn't rely on her gaze to feel whole. The key here is subtlety. You don't post to be noticed. You post because you're building something real. You share your discipline, your clarity, your mindset. You show your peace, not to flex, but to lead. Because you're no longer living for her validation. You're living for your mission. And sooner or later, she will see it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day she will scroll and feel the shift. Not because you disappeared, but because you evolved in full view without needing her to notice. That silence will hit different, not because you went quiet, but because everything about you now speaks without words. She will feel the weight of what she lost without you ever having to say it. And you don't reach back. You don't explain. You don't blink. You keep moving forward, calm, composed, untouchable, because that's the highest form of power, winning in silence, while they unravel in the echoes of your absence. Cha 10, forgive for power, not peace. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. People think it's soft, like surrendering to weakness or pretending the pain didn't matter. But real forgiveness? It's not peace for her. It's power for you. You don't forgive to let her off the hook. You forgive to unhook yourself from the weight she left behind. You forgive not because what she did didn't scar you, but because you refuse to carry her shadow into your future. That's not softness. That's strength at its highest level. Forgiveness is the final flex, the quietest, sharpest blow you can deliver. It says you no longer have the power to disturb me. And that, right there, is what devastates her ego more than hatred ever could. Because what crushes someone who expected to be hated, being genuinely, unapologetically unbothered. But make no mistake, you don't do this for her. You forgive for you. You forgive to end the endless loop of anger, like the sleepless mental battles, the recycled bitterness. Because if resentment still burns inside you, then she still lives there, rent-free. And a stoic man doesn't hand out space in his mind to anyone who hasn't earned it. You don't forgive and reach out. You don't forgive and chase closure. You forgive and walk forward. Quiet, solid, evolved. Because she expected fury, she expected backlash, she expected to live in your hate forever. But when you meet her memory with grace, and not performance, when you radiate calm detachment instead of chaos, that's when regret shows up like a blade she never saw coming. And that, right there, is the final frame. The full circle moment. You're not bitter, you're better. You don't just move on, you ascend. And she She's not just out of your life, she's out of your mind, out of your soul, out of reach. That's what true healing looks like. That's what detachment really means. You rise, not for revenge, not for validation, not to prove anything, but because you finally decided no one gets to break you twice. You made it to the end. And that alone speaks volumes, not just about your focus, but about your intent. You're not here to drown in bitterness. You're not here to chase ghosts or play games. You're here to rise quietly, powerfully, and permanently. Because this journey was never truly about her. It was always about you, about rediscovering the man beneath the wounds, beneath the noise, beneath the need to be seen. It was about stripping away the illusion until only truth remained. And now you see it. No contact was just the beginning. The real transformation comes when you become unreachable, when you move with purpose, not pain, when silence stops being a strategy and starts becoming your language. So let her scroll, let her wonder, let her sit outside the walls of the life you're now building with stone, steel, and discipline. While she plays shallow games, you play for legacy. While she collects moments, you build meaning, and while she looks backward, you've already stepped forward into your next chapter. This was never about revenge. It was about never being that unguarded again. It was about becoming the kind of man who no longer waits to be chosen, because he's already chosen himself. And that choice, it changes everything. This is your new era. One defined not by noise, but by clarity. Not by performance, but by purpose. Built on silence. Maintained through focus. Protected by unshakable self-respect. Carry that with discipline. Speak that through your actions. And remember, never confuse access with value again. You're not bitter. You're not broken. You're reborn. Now, before you go, let's reflect. Today, we burned the illusion, became unreachable, mastered the void, and mirrored her back to herself. We cut validation, transmuted pain, forged new identities in shadow, and learned the power of stillness, silence, and forgiveness. All of it was for one reason, to become untouchable in the most powerful way. If this stirred something in you, if you're ready to keep evolving with quiet intensity, then do this. Like this video, subscribe to Stoic Blessing, turn on notifications, and drop a comment below. I rise with silence and power. Because remember, she didn't lose you when she walked away. She lost you the moment you never looked back.